Bon matin, vous autres, madame. Bienvenue à Natchitoches pour la table française au Natchitoches. Nous sommes ici à Prather Coliseum au Natchitoches à Northwestern State University de la Louisiana. Et bienvenue. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Natchitoches. Welcome to Prather Coliseum, to the Folk Festival here at Northwestern State University. We are La Table Française au Natchitoches. We're going to tell you a little bit about our organization, about our efforts, and a little bit about ourselves, and we'd be happy to entertain any questions anyone may have. Madame, if you mind introducing yourself, please.
Mon nom est Teresa Edna Billiard. Si tu parles anglais, Bio, Spites. Je viens de Dulac, j'étais née à Dulac et je reste ici à Manchester.
Bon matin, mon nom est Dustin Fuquay. Je viens de la paroisse des Avoyelles et je reste ici au Natchitoches.
Bon matin, mon nom c'est Curtis DeSales. Je viens de l'appareil de Avoyelles, le village de Marksville. Je peux parler français jusqu'à j'avais 6 ans. J'ai une catholique école.
Bonjour à tout le monde, je m'appelle David Wood. J'habite à Natchitoches depuis 1984. Je suis prof de français à l'école de Louisiane. Ça fait grand plaisir d'être ici parmi vous. My name is David Wood. I've lived in Natchitoches for 30 years. I teach French at the Louisiana School, and I'm happy to have participated in the French table. I'm glad to be here this morning.
So the name of our organization is La Table Française au Natchitoches, and that basically means the French table at the Natchitoches. And just a little bit about what a French table is, and then I'll tell you a little bit more about our organization. La Table Française, the French table, is more or less a series of meetings, or it's a way for folks to get together in different areas across the world. But here in Louisiana, the Louisiana French tables are basically meetings held on a monthly or a weekly basis, where folks that are native Louisiana French speakers and other folks from the Francophone world get together just to talk in French and just to converse and keep their skills up. So that's what La Table Française, the French table, is in general. And La Table Française au Natchitoches, the literal translation of that is the French table at the Natchitoches. So taking it from the standard French to the Louisiana French version, we have retained the spelling AUX, au Natchitoches. Some Francophones may look at that and you want to almost call it incorrect, because the way to basically say at a place is ah. But the plural form is retained from back in colonial Louisiana during the 18th century, when the different First Nations and indigenous peoples over here, basically a lot of the military posts were set up by the French at the tribe. So you have La Poste des Natchitoches, or La Poste au Natchitoches. You have aux Opelousas, Louisiana, aux Avoyelles, Avoyelles Parish. So those kind of place names. So in our title, we've tried to retain some of the colonial French heritage, and also as an homage to the American Indians that were here first. So a little bit more about our organization. We were established in 2013, and it was as a means to basically, as I discussed, keep up our French skills. And a lot of us in our organization are intermediate learners and beginner learners like myself. And we also have people like Dr. Wood, who's a professor, and people like Curtis and Madame Therese, who are native French speakers. So I'd like to pass the mic, and maybe everyone can talk a little bit about themselves and about their French heritage.
J'ai appris comment parler français quand j'étais un enfant. I have been speaking French since I was a child. C'était ma première langue. That was my first language. J'ai été à l'école dans la paroisse de Terrebonne. I attended school in Terrebonne Parish. J'ai marié mon maître d'école. I married my high school teacher. Elle était assis ici, dans le nord de Louisiane. He was from North Louisiana. On a venu à Maine pour rester là dans 1971. We moved here in 1971. J'ai travaillé pour l'État de Louisiane. I worked for the state of Louisiana for 36 ans, for 36 years, the Office of Family Support. Et j'étais à l'école ici à Northwestern. I went to school here at Northwestern. Et j'ai gradué dans 2013. I graduated in 2003. Mon monde reste dans le sud de Louisiana. My family lives in South Louisiana. Et j'aime tourner et pratiquer le français avec eux. I like to return and try practice French with them.
As I mentioned, my name's David Wood. I've been living in Louisiana since 1984. Came down here to teach at the Louisiana School. My training is in traditional classical French, and I've been intrigued by Cajun French, Creole French, and so when I heard about the French table being organized in Natchitoches, I decided to try to participate, and I was able to do so the first year or so, and then had an engagement that took me away every third Saturday. But I've admired the efforts of Dustin and others in trying to maintain French language and French heritage.
Well, as you know, my name is Curtis DeSales. I was born and raised in Marksville, Louisiana, and I didn't speak English till I was 6. And I remember that very day that the nuns, I went to a Catholic school, the nuns took me by the hand and brought me upstairs in the Presentation Academy, and they put a little piece of paper in front of the desk, my name, how to do it in English. You know.
Just a minute, I can't hear.
Oh, you can't? Okay.
No.
All right. When I was young, about 6 years old, I was trying to learn English. The nuns from the Presentation Academy, they brought me up, and they brought me up to the stairs, and they would teach me how to speak English a little bit, just a few words. And they could all speak French. All the nuns were very fluent in French, and a lot of them were from France. And I learned how to, speak English slowly. By the time I was 6 months in school, I was getting along pretty good. But my mama never spoke any English. My daddy never spoke any English. My grandmother lived with us. She lived to be 104 years old. And she would sit down with me and talk to me all the old stories. She talked about the time in the Depression when they were poor. And, she got married when she was 13 years old, had 8 kids, and I have 175 first cousins on my daddy's side. So we have a lot of children. And she would talk to me all the stories, like how they made how they made a little bit of food that they had. They would take a little piece of fat, and she told me all this in French, and put it in some water and boil some greens or potatoes and eat that. And they called it the soup maigre, I guess lean soup, And then she would du pain levé, the homemade bread. She would tell me all these stories and all the legends too of the Dustin could do the fifoulet and the different legends and scary stories around. So I grew up, in the French culture and loved it.
Do you have children that speak French?
My son is half Filipino. I married a Filipino woman, so I have 3 sons, and but my youngest speaks a little French. He wanted to learn it, but the others didn't want to. And in Marksville, we have a lot of people that still speak French. And it's one of the more concentrated areas, I believe, right, Dustin? And yeah, but my kids, one of them learned, the other 2 didn't really want to. And I think, and they said that a lot of times in the past that it was they kind of frowned on you to speak French, but not in Voiles. That was they always encourage you to speak French. And when they told me this, I said, well, I never encountered that from the Voiles Parish.
Again, my name is Dustin Fuquay. I'm also from Avoyles Parish, from near the community of Marksville, the little community of Spring Bayou. I live here in Natchitoches Parish now, in the Cane River community in southern Natchitoches Parish. Going back to what Curtis said, in sort of the way, the order that we went around here, we represent a lot of the different, more or less the different demographics within le monde francophonie, the French-speaking world, especially the Louisiana part of it. Dr. Wood represents an academic who is well and PhD, well prosed in the French language, and a professor here at one of the local schools. Madame Therese represents someone that grew up in the French world, maintained her fluency throughout the years, moved away, and is still active in it. T. Curtis, mon ami, he represents a different part of that story, where someone who also grew up in that environment, moved away, and is now coming back and trying to push it on. I guess I represent the next generation. I'm about the generation of Curtis's children, maybe a little younger than some of Madame Therese's children. But I also grew up in that French-speaking environment. I was raised primarily by my grandparents and the older folks in my family. So I was very much around the language and around the culture a lot. And also a neat thing about where we come from, and it's something that I found very similar in Natchitoches Parish, is the Avoyelles Parish area, Terrebonne Parish, of course, too, a lot of American Indians in those areas, and a lot of American Indian influence. And growing up in the French environment, the French culture, but also with so much enculturation from our local Native Americans, just like here in Natchitoches, the Louisiana French language always intrigued me, because I knew that there were words that my family was saying and that I said, and phrases that I said, that I could look up in no French book and no French textbook anywhere around. And that always intrigued me, and that with other factors influenced me to become an anthropologist. So learning Louisiana French and trying to promote the culture has always been something that's very dear to me. And that's what we're trying to do here with La Table Française au Natchitoches. I mentioned some of the other models in Louisiana, the different French tables. There are over 20 French table meetings, a series of meetings in Louisiana. And for more information, you can reference the Council on Development of French in Louisiana. Their website has a listing of some of these French tables. But you'll find that some of the French tables in Louisiana will focus on Louisiana French, but a lot of them also it's more about just learning French and learning international French and standard French. So as an organization, that's something, we started off very heavy with the Louisiana French angle and really working on that. We have a lot of great resources other than the Louisiana French folks to work from with our academic partners here at Northwestern State and at the Louisiana School for Math, Science, and Arts, and different friends locally. So definitely the Louisiana French part of it is very critical, but the way to learn French, I mean, we're just trying to learn French for the greater part of that, and then trying to focus on Louisiana French where we can. So another thing with our organization is we do a lot of special events. We've had several special events in the past. One of them for the tricentennial of Natchitoches. Natchitoches celebrated its tricentennial in 2014, its 300th birthday. As part of that, La Table Française hosted a boucherie, a traditional boucherie and a traditional couchon de lait, where we actually butchered a hog, did the whole process, the boucherie, and then we actually had the couchon de lait part of it, the part where we ate the pig, at Fort St. Jean-Baptiste State Historic Site. So we regularly meet. We try to meet monthly. We've been kind of a little running behind the last year here, but we have a meeting series that we try to adhere to, and it's usually held at Fort St. Jean-Baptiste State Historic Site and also at Cane River Creole National Historical Park.
From how far a distance would people attend the session that you have here? Is it just within the parish, or?
Yes, ma'am. What's interesting is that we do have a few really good native speakers, folks like Madame Therese and T. Curtis, and we have Dr. Wood, the academic speakers around too, so we have a lot of great resources. And just those two factors alone, just that's something offered in Natchitoches, is a really big factor in ways people. So we've had folks that have come from Texas, from the Houston area, that have heard about our French table, because when you look on a map, Houston, as you go east toward Louisiana, Natchitoches is really a little isolate of the French heritage. It's still here. And then you go on to Acadiana, and of course that's where a lot of the emphasis and promotion is put today. So we attracted some folks from East Texas. People come from neighboring parishes, Sabine Parish, Grant Parish, Rapides Parish. Even some folks come up from Avoyelles Parish. So we have a lot of good visitation.
Are there any truly young people involved at all?
Yes, ma'am. Basically, our children and our friends' children, our families. And we do have, interested folks that attend the meetings, and they bring their kids to see what's going on and that kind of thing.
You gotta try.
How many people actually attend these meetings? How many people actually come every time you have them?
Of the meetings that we've had since 2013 through 2014, the highest number was around 35, and we usually average no less than 5 or 6 folks at a meeting. Yeah, we try to hold our meetings once a month, and we were doing it, different times, like the first Saturday or the third Saturday or whatnot. But a lot of us work for the local university, we work for the schools, we work for the national parks, we work for the state historic sites, we have families that have sports and different things. So it's been kind of rough the last year for us to get together. So we're thinking about reorganizing our meeting schedule to meet quarterly instead. But I want to encourage folks that are interested in the French tables to also check out the different French tables in Louisiana and what they're offered. Because talking about attendance and the people that attend these things, 2 come to mind that are very, very popular. La Table Française aux Appaloosas in Opelousas. They have regularly 40 or 30 to 40 people every time they do it, once the last Wednesday of the month. And then over in Arnaudville, Louisiana, on the second Saturday of the month, that's another very popular French table meeting, and they go at least 40 people every meeting. And that's a very diverse crowd, mixed folks. You go to some French tables, and it's all folks, native speaker folks from their 70s to their 90s. You go to some other ones like in Arnaudville, and it's a lot more diverse with younger people too. So.
Well, how does it actually work? You have a meeting and there are people there. Do you have speakers? Do you take turns talking? Do you just talk to
Okay.
each other?
The way it usually works is there's usually a moderator it's usually among the organization. It's called a capitaine, the captain, and that kind of comes off of Mardi Gras culture a little bit. But that's the captain of the group, and they usually serve as the moderator. And sometimes, like with our organization, we usually have a presentation where every time we start off, we introduce ourselves, we go around the room, say who we are. We have a little bit of food and refreshments offered. We do a potluck sort of a thing. And then a lot of times we'll have an activity. So for one of our activities, Dr. Wood instructed us on some different French songs, some song devices that he uses in his teaching. Another time, you'll see we have a binder over here with some of our information. And one time we analyzed different songs, like we looked at the Mardi Gras song. So we have homework, and we'll look at all the lyrics and that kind of thing and talk about it at the next meeting. So we do those sort of meetings where we go through it and everyone has a chance. And then we talk about our special events. And that's really what you'll see at a lot of the different French tables that you go to across the state, sort of that same format where you have a moderator and kind of the organization goes around. Yes, sir?
Do y'all have, you talk about these different groups, is there ever one large meeting where all the groups come together in Louisiana?
There hasn't been to date, and that's a wonderful idea. There's an organization that is l'Agence des Affaires Louisiane, is the agency of French affairs in Louisiana. It's called the Council on Development of French in Louisiana. And there's a state agency. They have a state website. You can look it up. And they kind of serve as a clearinghouse to promote the different French tables. So their website does have some of the French table meetings and when they have them. But a lot of the groups are like us where it's hard to stick to a third Saturday of every month kind of a format. But they kind of coordinate it. But no, that would be an excellent idea. Does anyone have anything they'd like to say before we run out of time?
I'd like to say something. The French, people need to understand, as far as I can understand, that there's different French in Louisiana. Not just the same, like me and Dustin speak the more colonial French. And there's Creole French, which is around this area. And then you also have the Cajuns down south. So, and it depends where you came from. Like my family came to the New World in 1641 in Montreal, before it was Montreal. And there were a few settlers, and my ancestor was a military person like I was, and all the way through the last 500 years. And when he got there, they gave him a piece of land on the St. Lawrence, and they made him like the civil judge, criminal judge of that area. And, then Montreal was founded in 1642. Then in 1798, the two brothers split. One came down to the St. Genevieve, Missouri area, and the Fort Chartres, and with Bienville. The other one came this way to Point Capet, to Vols Parish, like most of us. But then there's people that came from Nova Scotia, the Cajuns. So there's a little different, because our French is more colonial, where the people down south in Lafayette and all that are more Cajun French. And then we have something like Oswald, one of our good buddies here. He speaks a Creole type French. It's got a little African influence, I would imagine. So there is, I just wanted to clarify that.
So that's something I'd like to explain too. When your textbook French language, there is a variation, and over here we've come to call it Louisiana French. for many years, there was this division where are you speaking Cajun, are you speaking Creole, are you speaking Kouri-Vini, or are you speaking what? So it's to the point now where Louisiana French is more or less considered the umbrella term for the different dialects spoken in Cajun, Creole, and Indian communities.
But of the different dialects, can you understand each other?
They are mutually intelligible. That's what they say. Yeah, the term. So you have that kind of variation going on, and then it varies from parish to parish. It varies, and it's the same thing. I'm sure Dr. Wood could explain in Parisian French or in the standard French models. It's a lot of different, just a lot of different variation. And you have to learn and have a keen ear for all these different places. And it's something that's the fun part of it to me is all the diversity. That when I can go out to a lot of these, perhaps some of these Cajun dancers or some of our Creole crafters that are here at the Folk Festival, and ask them, oh, comment tu dis muscadin en français? And they'll say, oh, man, that's a soko. A soko, okay. Well, interestingly, a soko is the Choctaw word for muscadine, not the French word for muscadine. So again, those subtleties, there's a lot of that kind of thing going on in Louisiana French. You have anything?
A little bit like soda and pop and
That's correct.
Different terminology for the same drink.
That's correct. Something to keep in mind is when the folks first got over here, they only knew of the world in France and Europe and Africa, perhaps some of their colonies there. But when they got to the New World, there were things and animals and stuff that were all different that they didn't even have words for. So another one of these, for instance, is the raccoon. There was no raccoon in France. So when they got here, man, comment tu dis cet animal là? How you call that animal there? What is that? And what they're going to call it, what the local folks do, and it's shawi. Around here is usually the general, and it's from the American Indian language. So a lot of great examples of that kind of thing, and that's something that we try to promote and foster with our organization. So.
Do any of the American Indians here speak French?
Good segue.
Mais ouais, on parle français. Mon monde parle français. Moi, je suis indien de paroisse de Terrebonne. I'm Indian from Terrebonne Parish, and my people speak French. On a perdu nos langues. We lost our language, our Indian language. Et on a appris comment parler français quand le monde qui était avec nous. We learned to speak the French language from the people who interacted with my people in South Louisiana. Mais on parle toujours français, but we still speak French.
I have some background in linguistics, so I do have a fascination with accents and the fact that English is pretty much the primary language in America, of course. But if you were to go to, say, the New England area and then you compare it with the South, there's quite a difference in the way things are pronounced and the way they intonate. French being, not a primary language in America, is there a great deal of variation in linguistic, tonal, accents across the United States and across the pond over in Europe?
There is in France itself. There's a standard accent originated in Tours, central France, and of course with media, a lot of the accent has kind of been homogenized because of that. But even in France, in southern France, down by the Mediterranean, they have a very sing-songy accent. So it's been fascinating for me to come over here, to move down to Louisiana. I'm not from this part of I'm originally from Utah. It's been fascinating to hear and to see how words in Louisiana French are spelled and pronounced, and having learned the standard form, I can say, oh, that's where that word came from, but it's spelled differently, pronounced differently, and it's a charming experience just to see how these words have been adapted to the local environment. A lot of Cajun French or Louisiana French, they kind of take shortcuts and cheat and get around the grammar because that can be kind of complicated. But it is mutually intelligible. She and I could speak, any of us could speak, and we would understand each other. So that's part of the fascination.
How about, Mr. DeSalle, from his grandmother's lovely supply.
Let me see. It's been a little time. I'll tell it to you and I'll try.
About a song or a song?
Or a song,
Quick
yeah.
song lyric?
Uh,
Put you on the spot there, T. Kirk.
Well, let me see. Like, allons à Lafayette. Oui, allons à Lafayette, c'est pour changer mon nom. Comment tu vas t'appeler, Madame Bringon, comment? You know, so what does that say?
Let's go to Lafayette.
Tell me what it says. Je suis parti à Lafayette.
Yeah, we go to Lafayette, and this lady will change her name to your name.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's just this, you know. And then my grand. Oh, tell me. I'll tell you a little story that's kind of, but not in French, but it's hard to put. But this shows you how quaint. This shows you how quaint the area is in French. There was this next door to me when I was growing up. There was these two people. They were just simple people, and that's when the TV started coming out. It was a long time ago, and they saw a commercial about Pillsbury Doughboy, and they thought it was real. So her name was Agnes, and she said, and Monsieur Joe, and she said, Joe, partir le magasin, je veux un petit nom comme ça. I want a little man like that. He said, well, Agnes, okay, I'm gonna go try, but you know. So he goes to the Treasure Food, that little store, and he asks him, he says, I want that biscuit with the little man that come out the can. They go, oh, Pillsbury, okay. So they give him 5, he said, I want 5 cans here. Ooh, he brings it home. When he gets home, they open it up and they wait, and the little man don't come out. So she said, oh, mais c'est pas bon. It's not no good. He said, wait, Agnes, I'm going to open it up again. He opened another one. After he opened the 5 cans, the little man came out. So he goes back to the store. He says, tu m'as donné, c'est pas bon, c'est pas rien. There's nothing. It's no good. She said, Mr. Joe, there's no little man that come out the can. She said, oh, he said, Agnes is going to be so, you know, and they looked at the word. So he goes home and he said, Agnes, she goes, I don't believe you. She said, so she came over to ask my dad. And he said, oh, no, that's not right. He said, that's on TV. Oh, but they shouldn't do that, you know. They shouldn't put, but it, you know, it was hard to convert for one, because he only spoke very little English. But he thought that the TV said that little man came out the can. That's right.
J'ai appris une chanson, mais c'est de vrai français, de français de la France. Le français à Louisiane est vrai aussi. I learned a French song, but from French, Parisian French. And I said the real French, but Louisiana French is real also. Okay. Tellement éprouvé, en se demandant pourquoi c'est ainsi toute la journée. D'autres qui vivent dans les parages ne souffrant jamais de leur péché. Un de ces jours, on va tout comprendre. Un de ces jours, on saura pourquoi. Courage, mon frère, vis dans l'espoir. On va comprendre grâce à notre foi. We'll understand it better. The hymn in English is farther along, but we're saying we'll understand it better by and by.
All right. Well, I want to thank the audience and our moderator and our videographer, and we have maybe 5 more minutes for questions, but otherwise we're happy to talk with anyone afterward. And if you have any more, you want to learn more about La Table Française au Natchitoches, we typically, when we do have our meetings series going on, we advertise it in the local Natchitoches Times newspaper. We have a Facebook page. We have an email address, latable-française@gmail.com. So feel free to get in touch with us, and bien merci.